Good evening. This evening is June 7th. This is a meeting of the regularly scheduled school committee. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call of the members.
Mr. Ferranti. Here. Ms. Gravelisi.
Here.
Mr. McGuire.
Here.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Here.
Mr. Sinella. Here. Ms. Ty.
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Here. This evening we have one item on the agenda. That is the fiscal year 17 budget for the Revere Public Schools. We're going to start off with a public hearing on the budget. So if there are any proponents in the audience, now would be the time to come forward and speak favorably about the budget. Hearing and seeing none, I move that out of the hearing. Any opponents to the budget? Hearing and seeing none, I will defer to committee member Michael Ferranti.
Okay, obviously, I'm a proponent of the budget. The school committee with the administration put in a ton of work in this. We've been at this thing since February, and even now, it's still not a finalized one because we still have to wait for the vote from the Senate. A lot of thanks have to go out to our CFO, Matt Cruz, our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Diane Kelly, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Danielle McCoba, and obviously the Chairman and the Mayor of the City, Brian Arrigo, plus all the members of the school committee. This is a very difficult budget, which will be explained by Dr. Kelly as we go by each series. We did the best we could. The only good thing I say is we had no layoffs, which really is a plus considering where we started with this thing. And at that point, I would like to start the budget hearing myself. I will read each series, and then we'll vote on each one. All right, on the first series, the 1,000 series administration, the total amount that is being budgeted is $2,161,888. So moved.
Second.
At this point, then Dr. Kelly will explain the budget at that series.
Sure, and if you don't mind, if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to give a little bit of a history. As Mr. Ferranti just gave us an overview, I wanted to go a little bit more in depth into the process we've endured, really, this budget season, which was a little bit more arduous than have been budget seasons of the past. So just to bring us back a little bit to square one, Mr. Cruz and I have started working on the budget in late December, early January. And what we usually do at that time is use historical figures along with current enrollments to try to estimate what our budget will be going forward, what kind of an increase or in some cases a decrease we can expect. Because we had over 170 additional students in the district this year compared to last year, we at that time anticipated about a $2 million increase. We were hopeful that the legislature would see toward giving us even more than that. But we were absolutely stunned when the governor's budget came out with only a $500,000 increase. In a budget of over $100 million, that doesn't even pay the electric bill. So we immediately began the work of trying to figure out why we were so off in our estimation of what the budget might be. And when we dug into the budget more deeply, we saw that there was over a $2 million decrease and the amount of the reimbursement we got from the state for our students who live in poverty. It's been long known and long proven that students who live in poverty have larger educational gaps that need to be filled. And that requires additional supports, smaller class size, access to social workers, and other kinds of social service programs that can help students who are struggling at home. We saw the number of students, we saw a district go from 78% low income to just over 40% economically disadvantaged. And that meant that we lost funding for over 2,227 students who we began to call the lost poor of Revere. Naturally, because we were expecting a $2 million increase and we got a $2 million decrease in our reimbursement for poverty students, it's basically a $4 million swing from where we expected to be to where we were. We did get that $500,000 in the budget, so that left us, actually, looking at more specific numbers, it left us with a $3.73 million gap between what we knew we needed to keep the district operating at exactly the same level it had been last year, and where the legislature had funded us through the governor's office. I have to say, Michael talked about the hard work that this committee did and that Matt Cruz did on preparing this budget, but hard work doesn't go close to describing what you folks did, and I really am very appreciative of it, and I have tried to articulate to the staff in the school department. Many of them realize the extra steps that you did, the meetings up on Beacon Hill, the attendance at the Joint Ways and Means Committee meetings in Everett, all kinds of things that you didn't have to do and that you didn't normally have to do as a school committee. But I am very thankful that all of you were there, that all of you were present, that you all went to the meetings, that you took the time. Mr. Mayor, I know that you took the extra time reaching out to our legislature, and it made a difference. After all of these meetings that we had on Beacon Hill, I know that I was up there 9 times between February and today, with different meetings, with different groups, trying to advocate for the students of Revere. And as a result of that, both the House and the Senate have recommended a $1.89 million increase in our budget, which is very helpful. Now, I mentioned the gap was 3.73, so we're not quite there. But it definitely made our problem workable, whereas a $3.7 million problem would have meant layoffs. And so we're thankful also to our legislators, Speaker DeLeo, Representative Vincent, and everybody else on Beacon Hill who listened to us and helped us. And we're, of course, thankful for your work to all of the school committee members. So after we got past that hurdle, I should say, as Mr. Ferranti mentioned, the final budget hasn't been released yet from the state. It's currently in joint conference where they're trying to remedy discrepancies between the House budget and the Senate budget. But we don't have to worry so much about that because both the House and the Senate have approved this money for us. But we still had, at that point, a $1.84 million budget. And this committee, again, I think that we've met 5 times in the last 3 weeks. Is that right? To talk about budget, roughly? Yeah. So we've been at it, and I know that you shared priorities with me, and I shared priorities with you. And we really tried to focus around maintaining staffing levels as much as we could, ensuring that student support services were intact, making sure that the key programs and structures that have supported student achievement are kept in place. We want to maintain the momentum that we've seen over the last several years in terms of student achievement. We wanted to maintain the necessary support staff programs, so we didn't want to look at cutting some places where other districts have looked at, such as with paraprofessionals who are so important in our classrooms to assist teachers, social workers who help kids navigate the emotional disturbances that they often encounter both at home and in life in general. We wanted to work through this challenge by giving up things and not giving up people. And I think that we've done a very good job at that. We admittedly are going to have fewer staff members employed by the Revere Public Schools next year, but that will be through attrition and not through layoffs, which is a huge accomplishment. And I know that on behalf of the teachers and all of the other employees, they're very thankful to have job security that you've provided them through this budget. So with that, I know that Mr. Ferranti has called for a vote on the 1,000 series. So speaking specifically about that, the 1,000 series in the budget is administrative costs, and those primarily consume salaries and materials in the superintendent's office and in the business office. And in that series, we have proposed $119,400 in cuts. The 1,000 series represents 2.8% of our overall school department budget. And as I mentioned, our overall budget this year is just over $106 million. So it's pretty substantive. The percent of the cuts that we're calling for in this budget it's 6.4%. So it visits a little bit higher percentage of cuts on the administrative team than it does the overall percentage of the budget. And those include one secretarial position in the superintendent's office, as well as this body actually gave up some funding that was in place for policy work and some professional development for school committee members. And then there's also superintendent's office supplies and the business office supplies, including some allotment of overtime for the business office clerks who often have to work overtime, initially setting up the payroll each year, and then again at the end of the year when we're delivering balloon checks to teachers. So in total, it's $119,400 in cuts to the 1,000 series.
One more thing. All right, and just, I mean, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, that when some of the members are not voting on particular issues, it's not because they don't want to vote, it's because they can't because of a conflict of people working, the personnel that are related to us. We've had questions that saying, well, why don't you vote? Well, that's the reason why, because legally we cannot do it. It's not a no vote, it's just not voting on that particular series. At that time, I would like to call for a roll call of the 1,000 series.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire. Yes. Mrs. Rizzo.
Yes.
Mr. Sinella.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes.
Okay, the next series, the 2000 series, instructional services. The total amount budget is $48,119,847. So moved.
Second?
Dr. Kelly?
Sure, thank you. So as you can see, as Mr. Franti just mentioned, this is a very large portion of the school department budget. This is where almost all of the salaries are allocated. It's actually 62.8% of the overall budget, and it's where we have visited 62.5% of the cuts. It's a total of just over $1,100,000 in cuts, and a big chunk of that is in the non-salary budgets for our schools. So those are the amounts of money that are allotted to principals to help the school function and operate well. It also includes some overtime for clerical staff and payments to teachers to do the hourly work that they do outside of their contractual hours. It also includes cuts for some computer labs that we had designs on that we might have to delay, and cuts to other curriculum office, non-salary supplies and materials. There are a couple of positions included in these cuts, and again, those are by primarily through attrition of a couple of lab technicians who have left the school department during the school year, whose jobs we did not replace. There's a technology position at the Garfield Middle School that the principal feels she can staff her building without replacing. A half-time English teacher at the high school, same situation. The school feels they can get away without replacing that position. And some educational software such as Edwin Teaching and Learning, which fell into this category due to its professional development component for teachers. So altogether, it's $1,167,730 in cuts, which is about 62% of the overall cuts to this budget, and is proportional to the percentage of the budget that this series consumes.
Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti.
Not voting.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
Not voting.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Not voting.
Mr. Sinella.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes.
All right, the next series, the 3000 series, it's other student services. Total budget is $7,295,740. So moved.
Second?
Dr. Kelly?
So the 3000 series is where we have most of our funding allotted for transportation, athletics, school nurses, other services that kids need and rely on in order to function effectively in school, but they're typically outside of the classroom. Food services, things of that nature fall into this series. And here, this series is also seeing a larger percentage of cuts as the administrative series did compared to the percentage of the budget. The 3000 series is only 9.5% of our overall budget, but 21% of the cuts are being visited on this series. They include things like security overtime, the non-salary allotment that we give for our health programs, and the same for athletics. And I'll just specify on that, it's non-salary. I'm not talking about cutting any kinds of coaches or anything like that. What we've done is decrease the allotment for non-salary items such as new uniforms and things like that that will have to wait. We haven't eliminated it. There are some supplies and materials that we're going to need to buy, but we've reduced that budget just as we have all others. We've also reduced funding for training for our IT staff as well as our cafeteria staff. And again, that's something that we're just not going to be able to do in this coming school year. We've had attrition of one school nurse position that we have not refilled, a computer technology position, which is very difficult for us not to fill, but we've decided not to, just as all other departments have had pieces not filled, so shall the IT department. We've had one additional secretary outside of the superintendent's office. It's actually a school department secretary that was not replaced, and a bus monitor that was not replaced. So overall, the cuts to this series are $393,900, and again, that represents 21% of the overall cuts to the budget.
Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Our next series is the 4,000 series. It's the operation of plant/maintenance. Total amount budgeted, $8,056,059. So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. So, and I just noticed that I have a line item, I have a typo here. This should say 4,000, oh no, wait a minute, what did I do? All right, here we go. The 4,000 series is the operation of plant and maintenance. And in this series is where we see primarily our custodian and maintenance workers and folks like that, and also the supplies and materials and funding for any repairs that we need to do to buildings and infrastructure. Overall, they represent 10.5% of the budget for the entire school department, and their visited on them will be 10% of the cuts that we need to do, and that comes out to $186,400. That comes primarily through the attrition of one custodial position that's not being replaced. There's some custodial overtime that was cut. Again, we haven't cut that entirely because we still need to rely on our custodians to come in when we have an unexpected problem in a building, or when it snows, for example, to clean paths for students. So we haven't eliminated overtime, but we have reduced it. And Mr. Cruz and I are going to be working very closely with department heads to make sure everybody is staying within their budget allotments for overtime throughout the year. And of course, we'll share that information with the school committee as well. There was also a minimal reduction to the custodial non-salary. Again, those are areas that we don't want to cut too much because we don't want to do things like not replace broken glass and windows and doors and things like that that we need to do to ensure a safe learning environment for our students. So the total cuts in this series were, again, $186,400, and that represents 10% of the overall budget cuts.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
All right, the next series, the 5,000 series, employee benefits insurance. Total amount budgeted, $1,254,314. So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelly?
So I'll just to foreshadow for the folks at home, this is one of the 4 last series in the budget. And these last 4 series, you're going to see that there are no cuts. I'll still put them up each series as Mr. Ferranti calls them. But I just wanted to give a little explanation that these are typically areas over which we have very little control. So this first one here, the 5,000 series employee benefits and insurance, we don't control the rates set by insurance companies. So we have to budget based on what they tell us the cost is going to be. And so this is an area where we have not allocated any cuts from what the budget was originally planned to be.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Not voting.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Not voting.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Not voting.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Urigo?
Yes.
Our next series is the 6,000 series, Civic Activities and Community Service, total amount budgeted $123,830. So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelly?
So this series actually is a series that pays for our community school, which is actually funded through the city and reimbursed to the school department through Schedule 19. So there's very little cost. Actually, there's no cost to us, right? You pay for the whole thing? No. So since the mayor's office pays for the whole thing, we chose not to make any cuts in this series either.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Urigo?
Yes.
7,000 series is the building improvements, total amount budgeted $967,905. So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelly?
So again, this is a series, the 7,000 series is actually programs that are paid for by the city. They're capital improvement programs on the buildings, any cost of which we incur is reimbursed through the city through Chapter 19. So again, since it costs us nothing, we didn't cut any of it.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Urigo?
Yes.
A 9,000 series, programs with other schools, total amount budgeted $8,670,000. So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kelly?
So the 9,000 series is actually, it's programs with other schools. That's where we have our students outplaced who have exceptional services needed in order to complete their educational plans. And they're typically services that we don't, or they're always services that we don't provide here in Revere. Because we're not able to provide those services, we are obligated to educate these students in an outplaced environment. And again, this is something that we don't have control over. Mr. Malone and the Special Education Department have estimated the cost very closely, working with Mr. Cruz, of what the cost of the outplacements will be next year based on our current enrollment. They always put a little bit of a cushion there, anticipating new enrollments of students who are not yet aware of the services we're going to need to provide. But this again is an area where we don't have a lot of wiggle room to cut, and that's why we did not cut anything from the original budget in the 9,000 series.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Urigo?
Yes.
Our final line in the budget is the total school department budget of $76,649,575. So moved.
Second.
So just before you vote the final budget, I'll add just two things. I did give a listing here of the total cuts, and you'll see that overall, all of the cuts that we just described come to over $1.8 million. And again, it's unfortunate that we have to see cuts in our budget ever. They definitely represent programs that our kids need, and our goal going forward will be to reinstate any programs that we weren't able to carry forward through this budget. But, when we combine the funding that you're all about to vote with almost $30 million in grants, excuse me, it's a very large budget, and I'm just proud again of this committee and of our team for being able to design a budget that lets us live within our means and still preserve programs for students.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Urigo?
Yes. Before we close, I do want to take just a couple minutes to thank Dr. Kelly and her team for the great work that they've done. I know this is a difficult budget season for you and your team, and to be able to work through some of the uncertainty that was coming from the state really is a testament to the great work ethic and great staff that you have. So I feel comfortable, investing. I've heard an awful lot about the cash in the mayor's drawer that there may or may not be and how in difficult
If
times.
there may be, we'll
Yeah.
take it.
In difficult times, if there were, I would feel comfortable giving it to the school department, let me say that. I think the amount of, the great strides that this school department has made, and the achievements that we've had, and the things that we've seen in terms of really the marketability of the city. Because at the end of the day, when people decide whether or not they're going to live somewhere, they're looking at the school department. And for the momentum that's been built, and I think the investment that not only the state but the city has made, we're seeing the fruits of that every day. And just at the city council meeting yesterday, giving out scholarship awards, you hear from some of the kids and you get to know them a little bit and you hear their stories, and it's incredible. So this is, I know it was a difficult budget season, but hats off to you. Great job. Thank you. Any other members? With that, Mr. Sinella.
Dr. Kelly, just mentioning scholarships, I asked you, there were two $15,000.
He's new.
That is my
Doesn't work. Here it is. All right, the scholarship, I had asked you at the awards, there were two $15,000 scholarships, and we asked, you know, who came up with that kind of money? Would you care to just, for 2 seconds, I mean, not without being specific, I mean, I thought it was a typo error, you know,
Yeah.
1,000, 1,500, but not 15,000. McDonald,
5,000.
no,
No,
there were two for 15.
O'Connell,
Something, yeah.
Irish guy.
Right.
So, Mr. Snell, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm actually disappointed. I know that the O'Connell family was in attendance at the awards night, and I unfortunately wasn't able to meet them, which I wish that I had been able to. But you're absolutely right. They gave two separate $15,000 each scholarships to two of our students. And, you know, one of the incredible things about the scholarship awards night, where we actually gave over $190,000 this year, and that does not include all of the scholarship money that kids got directly from schools. So all of our kids that got full scholarships to various schools across the state. I know that our college and career counselor, Diana DiCristoforo, was working today on compiling all of that information together for me. And I believe that I saw an email from her just before this meeting started, but I didn't have time to process it, so I haven't looked at that fully. But to get two $15,000 scholarships, I don't know if everybody can appreciate how much that means to a student to have $15,000. It's such a huge sum. And, you know, the O'Connell family who gave those scholarships have changed those kids' lives without a doubt. And the beautiful thing is, the way the high school organizes the scholarship night, the kids don't know what they're getting until they get there. So those kids and their family walked into that auditorium and received a book that had all the names, and went through and found their names and had that delighted shock to see. And I spoke to both of the students who were the recipients and one of the parents after, and they were just beside themselves elated. So it's a wonderful thing. And I mean, there are so many generous people in the city of Revere who find it appropriate to usually memorialize their loved ones by creating a scholarship in their name. And it does such a tremendous thing for our students. It's just amazing to watch. And for some of our kids who really struggle, it's the difference between whether or not they're going to go to college. And, you know, we had the privilege at the city council meeting last night of hearing from several of those kids, and they talk about being mechanical engineers and civil engineers and environment, you know, it's just incredible the jobs that these kids are going after. And I think that is, too, a testament to the teachers and the other staff members in the school department who instill these ideas in these kids and give them the idea that that's where they belong and that's where they should go. So, you know, it's really, being a Dorchester girl, it's pretty incredible to be so entrenched in a community where everybody really looks out after each other and really tries to push everybody further up the hill. You know, it's really an amazing thing, and I think the city itself should be really proud of those scholarships and all of the many other ones that were awarded the other night.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Chai.
if I may.
Ms. Chai.
Mr. Sinella just asked me about who the O'Connells were. Mr. O'Connell, the father of the person who gave this, Mr. O'Connell was the principal of the McKinley School for a long time. And his daughter, besides the O'Connell now who gave it, his daughter and his wife ran a daycare, which was then run by Peggy Coates, who then became a teacher of early childhood and first grade at the Garfield School. Retired maybe 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. But this is a family that has lived in Revere for generations, and her brother had this opportunity to pay back, and he chose to do that. Pretty good.
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Dr. Kelly, where are the
Ms.
recipients
Franti.
going to school? Do we know?
I don't know offhand, no.
Okay.
Any other members? With that, I will, Mr. Sinella.
There was also Roger Marino, who graduated in 1956 from EMC. He gives, I think, $3,000 or $5,000 scholarships, and he's done that for years.
Yeah.
And a lot of retired teachers no longer with us. Their names, Ms. Ty and I were going back and forth. Remember this one, remember that one. Haven't forgot to remember, their days in Revere. So like going along with what you said, it's very warm to know that people care.
Maybe I should work with the mayor's office to see if we can't honor some of these incredible citizens that coordinate this stuff.
We absolutely can do that.
Okay.
And hopefully I'll find that drawer of money. Still looking. With that, we'll close this evening's school committee meeting. Thank you.